Evening, and welcome to this week's rant, which is entitled, Should I Be Updating My Computer? So, most of us, in one shape or form or another, probably use a computer to help them with their musical exploits. Now, I use two. And they are sitting here behind me. This nice red one is an Apple Mac, and this lovely blue one is a Dell Windows PC, or Windows laptop, should I say. One runs Windows 10, and one runs Mac OS, and this is currently running 10.14. And you're using these things typically for things like your door, or many doors, depends on how you operate. Software synthesizers, I'm guilty, but I don't use them too much. Librarians, sysx transfers, and doing things like updating firmware on said pieces of equipment. All of these things you typically use one of these things for. So they are quite integral to the way we work nowadays. Very rarely do you actually sit down, I say that with sort of kind of tongue in cheek actually, and just play your keyboard or synthesizer. If you're doing any sort of recording work, anything like that, these things will come into the mix somewhere. So if you have a Mac, for the last few weeks, your Mac has probably been bugging you to upgrade to the latest and greatest Apple operating system, which is 10.15, codename Catalina. If you have a Windows machine, then probably pretty much once a month, your Windows machine is going to grind to a complete halt while it does what we in the trade can term as Patch Tuesday, which is where Microsoft releases all the latest patches for their operating system and any piece of software you've got running on your operating system, and your machine will then slowly chug its way through all those upgrades. And typically, in order to make your machine run properly again, you have to go through the full update cycle of switching it or restarting it and telling it to go through the install routine, which it does. And depending on how many upgrades there are, that can take anywhere from between 10 minutes to 2 hours. But we're kind of getting used to that sort of scenario at the moment. So the question is, should you be doing these upgrades? And how is it going to affect your music production capabilities? So I'm going to make some very broad statements actually. So the first is, patches are fairly minor updates to the operating system, and are generally okay to apply to the computer. Because they don't make very large changes. They are fixing bugs with the operating system typically. There are some security patches that get thumped down onto these things as part of these updates, but generally they do not affect the way you operate. Patches like service releases or service packs, or however the operating system vendor wants to classify them, are generally consolidation patches, and they're consolidating all the bugs and hot releases and such like that have been released onto the platform. Now, service releases are not just restricted to the operating system. They can be related to the software you've got installed as well. So you just need to be careful, but they tend to be rolled up bug fixes into a sort of stable platform, and then they release that platform, and theoretically it should then be stable again. Whereas depending on what their testing regime is, definitely on application software, the application of a service release can actually make it more unstable than it was before you applied it, if that makes any sense. But normally, because they are an amalgamation of individual patches that have been applied, they're generally quite safe to install. I'll come on to that in a minute. A major release of the operating system, however, is a major change. At this point, the vendor or the application vendor can make radical changes to the way the software operates or the way the operating system operates. These have to be treated extremely cautiously. You need to evaluate them before you implement them. To that extent, with these three broad brush statements I've made, any patch that is applied to the operating system or an application within the operating system has the capability or the ability to change how the system works. And if it has the ability to change how the system works, it also has the ability to make the system not work as well. And because of that, and what I'm talking about here is application software, operating systems, drivers, services that are running on those machines. And because of that possibility of things not working following the implementation of something, you need to be very careful. Why am I saying this? Why am I having this rant at camera about this? Well, I'm going to take you back many, many years to Windows 2003 server. So this was the operating system released by Microsoft tail end of 2002, 2003, Windows 2003 obviously. And it was the latest and greatest operating system at the time. About 18 months to 2 years after they released Windows 2003, Microsoft released Service Pack 1 for Windows 2003. Now, at this point in time, I was working for a software vendor. Okay, that was my day job. I was a manager in one of the divisions that installed the software at client sites. So I had first-hand experience of how our software worked and how it was installed and how we configured it. So what our software did, like many pieces of software back then, is it used something within the Microsoft operating system called the Distributed Communications Model, or DCOM for short. Okay, it was a industry standard used across the board about how you communicated between clients and servers and servers and servers. Okay, fair, as I say, standard implementation. Many vendors, software authors like the company I work for, use this particular system. With Service Pack 1, Microsoft decided right at last minute to include some functionality in their Service Pack that effectively changed how the security around the DCOM object model worked. So my company, a few days after the patch was released, or Service Pack 1 was released, our clients busily went and installed Service Pack 1 on their servers, and a couple of days later the support phones in our support team went red hot. The reason they went red hot is because our software stopped working. Well, actually our software didn't stop working, our software carried on working, it was working fine. The problem was it couldn't communicate with other servers in the server farm, or it couldn't communicate with the clients. But the software was actually running fine in the background. It's just that Microsoft has shut down how it communicated. So why am I telling this tale? Well, we had gone through a process of testing all the hotfixes that Microsoft had issued and had made appropriate code changes in our product to account for them. We had issued those changes, or were prepared to issue those changes as a service pack or a service release immediately following Microsoft's implementation of service or release of Service Pack 1. The second thing is that we as a software vendor always tell our clients to test the upgrades first before applying them to production systems. That tends to fall on deaf ears, I might add, because people know best. Even though my company was a Microsoft Platinum development partner, we had not seen sight of these changes that had been made to the DCOM object model, and therefore weren't prepared for them. To the point where, when it was installed, it stopped our software working. So, therefore, at this point in time, any of our clients worldwide who installed the software patch or service pack found that everything ground to a halt. My company was basically, the finger was pointed at my company by all the clients that our software wasn't working, when in actual fact the reason why our software wasn't working was because our clients hadn't done what they were meant to do in the first place, but was written into our contract that said you must test this on a tech development system before you apply it to a production system. But clients never read that stuff. So, going back to my broad statements, it's very rare that a minor update will affect programs, services, drivers. Okay? Normally they are to fix a problem, and you should, when you're looking through, from an operating system point of view, it's very difficult to run through what Microsoft are actually releasing, but if you want to scan their release notes, you'll find out what they're actually trying to apply to your machine. If it's an application, it's always well worth going through the release notes about what the application is trying to fix before you apply the minor release. Normally these for applications will be hot fixes from the vendor, they won't be releases though. Point 2, let other people have the pain first. Okay, this has always been my mantra here. If it's a major service pack, service release, then let somebody else find the problems before you do. Believe you me, this has been a policy that I've had for many years, and it's served me very well, and I'll come on to the reason why this is still at 10.14 in a sec. So just hold off, don't install it straight away, hold off, wait about 8 weeks and monitor the websites or the user groups to see who's having pain, because that might give you an indication of whether you should be upgraded or letting somebody else do it first. If it is a major operating system release, so you're going from Windows 7 to Windows 10, you're going from Mac 10.14 to 10.15, stop. Stop. Look at what you've got installed on your computer. Take an inventory of what door software you've got, what drivers you've got, what soft syncs you've got, and go to the manufacturer's websites for every single one of those and make sure they certify it against the operating system that you are going to. Now, Windows have been really sneaky recently because what they've done with Windows 10 is they've just done a major release to Windows 10, which probably would have made it Windows 11, but they've not called it Windows 11. But effectively what they've done is they've dropped support for the original release of Windows 10, or that support is starting to go out, and it's now this new version, and it was done under the bonnet fairly recently. So if you had a service release on your Windows 10 machine that took a long time to install, that's what it was. It was a release of Windows 10 that has done a fairly radical upgrade to the way Windows 10 works. Okay. So as I said, I've got 10.14 on this thing here. The reason why I haven't gone to Catalina, even though it's been bugging me now for nearly a month to go to Catalina, is actually very simple. If you go to Catalina, or if you had gone to Catalina in the last month, then you would have found that all your Roland Boutique, Aria, and any synthesizer drivers you've got installed would have stopped working. Okay, Roland have recently released on their website a specific version of the drivers for 10.15, and this is to do with the fact that Apple have changed the security model, or something in the security model that is stopping their drivers working. Okay, that's the reason why this is still sitting at 10.14, because I'm not prepared, or I wasn't prepared, to stop all my ARIA equipment working while, upgrading. That would have been a right royal pain in the proverbial. But now Roland have now released new driver sets for this I will now consider upgrading this. Obviously, I'm going to go through and do some due diligence. And what due diligence am I going to go through? Well, the first is take a complete inventory of what you've got excuse me, on these machines. What music software, I mean, it doesn't only apply to music software, it applies to all software, but generally, if you're a musician, it's the music software that's going to sort of come along and shoot you. So get an inventory. Make sure you have an inventory of everything you've installed. Now, a lot of people are quite gung-ho. They will install stuff and forget about it. But believe you me, you need to go back through everything you've got installed on this thing, and you need to make sure you understand what it is, what version you installed it at, and then go to what version you've got on your machine, and then go to the vendor's website and make sure they support the operating system you're going to go to. I know this sounds laborious, but believe you me, it will save a lot of pain in the future. If you go to the vendor's website and they say you need to do an upgrade to support your newest operating system, then you know how you're going to do it. So you know that as soon as you do the operating system upgrade, something in your current installation is going to stop working, and then you need to apply whatever patch or upgrade the vendor is saying that you need to apply to make it work again. The other thing you need to bear in mind about this, of course, is that for some vendors, especially if they're smaller vendors, they don't have huge software teams, and therefore this process can take actually something like 3 months from the point that the manufacturer or operating system vendor issues a new operating system to the point where they issue either a patch or an update. Can be a 3-month window. It can actually be longer, but typically it's the 3-month. It can be up to a 3-month window. So you need to be very patient, and you need to hold off on hitting that upgrade button until you know that everything you've got is going to work on your target operating system. That's kind of all I had to say on that, and I didn't think that was going to take me very long to run through, but it has. The other thing I was just going to run through today, and it's on the floor in a box, oh, there's the box, is this kind of arrived. And I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with this. So this is the or the Grey Matter upgrade for the DX7. This is an upgrade for the Mark II. It's not the Mark I upgrade. This is a Mark II upgrade, which introduces a whole bunch of new functionality to the DX7. Now, I've always said I was going to keep my DX7 pretty pure, and to be honest, I'm still kind of that mind. But this has arrived. I mean, it's in full working condition. There's the original book for it, telling me everything that you need to do, including the proper instructions. And then what we have, all wrapped in bubble wrap and in anti-static thing, which I'm not going to open for the time being, but I'm going to show you. There you go. There you go. I think that's better. There is the Grey Matter board for the DX7. Now that obviously is a daughter board that goes over the chip that you take out. And as I said, I'm in two minds of what to do with this. I have to be honest at the moment. I am probably for the moment just going to keep it in the box and consider my options. Now, one of my options would be to go and buy a second DX7, and that is something that I am considering. And the second DX7 effectively is the recipient of the Grey Matter, and the first DX7, which I've got in the studio at the moment, remains pretty pure. That, I think, is what I'm going to do, but for the time being I have put it in a nice box, and that nice box is going to go off to storage for the time being. Any comments or any thoughts about what I should do with this Grey Matter card? Including possibly selling it on. although that might be a bit disingenuous to the person who gave it to me. But thank you for giving it to me anyway. So, whereas I thought this wasn't going to take me very long, I've actually rabbited for 20 minutes. So I'm going to, at that point, call it an evening and say, Nanu. Oh, I can't remember, was it Nanu Shazbot? And see you next week. Bye-bye.
Remember, hit that like button if you like what you saw. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified about more rants, more mailbag, more questions and answers, and more videos about this sort of stuff when it's loaded to the channel. Until next time, bye-bye.